Politicians don't understand people who do good simply because it's right. It makes them nervous.
Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Thursday. It is the 1st of August. You may have noticed there is some new music playing in our hold room, or whatever the heck we call it. I call it the hold music on Rumble. If you are joining us on Twitter or X, if you are joining us on Facebook, if you're joining us on Locals, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. Make sure you guys consider checking out the live chat at rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin, where we do roll live at 0930 Eastern Time every weekday. Today's going to be a special show. We're going to be talking about the prosecution of the war and the persecution of the 9/11 hijackers. So I want to get into that very momentarily. And in order to do that properly, I had a little mental mind meld that happened over the internet and across great distance. My friend George Hill reached out because I reached out to him telepathically and said, I need somebody to come and talk about this that knows more. And he stepped up. So what has happened is the 9/11 hijackers, or at least the mastermind behind it, was given a plea deal. We're going to talk about that in just a second with somebody who knows far more than I do. And that's how we do it here. Before we get started with any of that, I want to make sure that we thank our sponsors, and we are going to do that right now. Folks, I need you to stop what you're doing and listen to this. Your God-given freedoms are up for the takings, and you're seeing it. Even worse, the ones that are doing the takings are the same ones that we thought swore to defend them. They think they can violate your rights to protect your own family. They think that they can force delusions on your children, and they think they can control the media and hide the truth. So far, so good. But what they cannot take away is self-reliance, that peace of mind. So the question is, do you have water filtration? Because you should. Do you have a solar generator? You better. And emergency food on your shelf. You can get it now from My Patriot Supply. They've served millions of American families, and they are the most trusted name in survival for a damn good reason. They're the things stacked up in our closet as well. Go to preparelikekyle.com right now. You'll save $200 on the best-selling 3 months emergency food kit. They deliver over $2,000 calories per day for less than about $5.25. That's a good deal for you guys. Lasts up to 25 years, so you can take your time with it. Did I mention the food is delicious? Go to preparelikekyle.com. Save that $200. Get free shipping. That's my big thing. And the website again, preparelikekyle.com. Without any further ado, let me bring my guest on because we're going to do that. We'll go into the story here so we get it kind of covered down. But here is Suspendable USA founding member and massive ball carrier, George Hill. He stepped out of retirement, folks, to do this stuff. No one made him do this, but he did. So I appreciate you being here, buddy.
No, it's glad to be here, man. It was on short notice. I just finished out of hair and makeup, and I was able to get here in front of the camera, like just in the nick of time.
Unlike many people, you've got a lot more makeup that has to cover down on that cue ball.
A lot. They have to actually buy it by the pint.
That's strong. Yeah. And then they apply it with some kind of like a rotary buffer system.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right, so we're going to be talking about one of your favorite topics, or maybe one of your topics of a lot of professional time that you spent. Let's give people a quick background. Not everybody has been on the show or seen the show a lot, so I want to let you do maybe a 2-paragraph intro of your background and why you're qualified to speak about this.
Sure. So I'm actually going to start at 9/11. I did 13 years active duty Marine Corps, but I made a genius move in 2000 and went into the Navy's intel program in 2000. Quickly got mobilized 3 times, one of which was in Guantanamo Bay. And I was the Saudi Arabian team chief in almost the entire year of 2004. All my detainees obviously were from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the intellectual and financial engine of the global jihad movement. was then, still is. Was recruited by the National Security Agency, where I did find, fix, finish operations, obviously for counterterrorism. And then after only 5 years with the NSA because of family issues, I wound up working for the FBI, which was devastating, but I survived. And I had all three national security programs: counterintelligence, cyber, and counterterrorism. I was also the co-supervisor for the Boston Marathon bombing task force. So I've been immersed in deeply on the front lines, both overseas and domestically in the terrorism realm. I teach it at college in a master's course. Spent a lot of time with a former professor from Al-Ansar University in Cairo, studying the Quran and the Hadiths. So I feel, obviously, I'm not a Muslim and did not live full time in the Middle East, although I did spend quite a bit of time in Afghanistan and Pakistan. There are better Islamic experts out there, but I think I'm better than the loudmouth guy at the end of the bar.
You're better than I am, that's for sure. My my interest has never been on that, other than I always kind of had a passing interest joining the military, so we saw that there were enemies over there, but my understanding of them was always lower. So that's why I like to bring you on here, and I do appreciate you jumping in. Can we play a fun video? Because we played this a while ago. It got a good response, and this will maybe introduce a different side of what goes on in Hamas. Would it be fair to say that Hamas is a fairly successful fundraising organization?
Yes, and it works very well for their leadership until recently.
Until very recently. So, folks, we played this a while ago. We're crossing one of the three off this list. We're going to be talking about that person, but let's get started up in kind of a lighthearted way. By the way, George and I are probably the most sarcastic and the darkest humored people of the Suspendables. Is it accurate?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So if I could redo this video, I would actually put an X over the number 3 that pops up on here. But let's play this for the folks to get kind of a taste of what we're talking about, and then we'll get into the analysis that's a little bit more serious. A little bit, not a lot.
The children of Gaza are suffering. They have no food or medical supply. But you can help. Please open your heart and make a donation by clicking in the link below. Shukran and God bless you.
Cannot believe what we have brought on Gaza. Thank Allah that we are safe in the plaza. There's nothing left to eat like a Ramadan retreat. I don't really give a shit, cause I'm hanging in my suite. Check out, we are dealing here with monsters. The room service wouldn't bring us lobsters. Call Maya Khalifa to play with us some FIFA and tell her to dress up like she is a nurse in Shifa. Dollar bills, dollar bills. My people have no water, wonder how it feels. Dollar bills, dollar bills. They have no gasoline, I just order menu wheels. Donate us money, my dog needs new Armani. Gaza sky is black, but Qatar is always sunny.
All right, there's more to that song, but let's leave it that. Gaza sky is black, but Qatar is always sunny. What do you think, George?
It's a grift, you know, for some people, and the Islamic world, the Arab world have been using the Palestinians as a cudgel for decades. Nobody wants them. They really, from a genealogy standpoint, are not a people. They are a displaced diaspora, and it's sinful how they're being used. And I don't want to come across as a Palestinian sympathizer, but using human beings for financial gain put me down as strongly opposed.
Yeah, that's fair. So we can be two things at once. We can say that the movement and what Hamas does is pretty evil and it's pretty obvious, and so I can side with actions against them, but also feel sympathy for human beings that are being clearly abused and don't understand what their role is, which is usually sort of manipulated and human shields and all this kind of thing.
It's horrible, absolutely horrible. These people have become multi-millionaires that we large part paid for with U.S. tax dollars. I mean, we built a $200 million pier to feed the citizens of Gaza, and it got wrecked in a matter of weeks. I mean, we're just...
And it obviously it plays on the sympathies of the political left that wants this sort of thing, but it also ends up just enriching people that are military contractors and whoever was out there building this, the material suppliers. Let me throw the article on the screen here so people kind of have an instinct. We talked about this the other day, but right now we are dealing with some incredible escalations that are going on in the Middle East. Iran is vowing retaliation. This is something we're seeing from CNN. After the assassination of a Hamas political leader, the number 3 that you saw on that screen, if you were watching on the video, and we'll kind of get into who he was, but a claim on that video was that he was worth $5 billion, and all estimates I've seen are between $4 and $6 billion. So an awful lot of money. They've also said that they've killed the head of one of the Hamas military wings. This would be the third, we'll call it political military assassination that Israel has carried outside of their own borders. It said on Thursday that they killed a guy named Mohammed Daif, who was the military wing, and he was supposedly the architect of the October 7th attack. So we have that guy. Then they also killed another guy named Khan Yanis, which was on July 13th, the same day that Donald Trump was shot. In fact, I remember thinking that there was a real big issue, that we were about to have a world war before we heard about what went on with Trump. I was out in my garage and I was like, oh my God, the Middle East is about to kick off again. And then we got overshadowed by Trump news, which is obviously more important to us because it's local. But globally, there's been some conflict brewing here for the last month or so, and the Israelis are just getting it done, whether you like it or not.
I'm going to call some balls and strikes here, and it's going to irritate some people. I'm not coming down for one side or the other. I'm not attacking Netanyahu or how the Israelis, what their motivations are in the response to October 7th. But at the end of the day, it would appear that Netanyahu's plan on taking out Iran, and he's been very clear for quite a few years that a nuclear Iran cannot continue to exist. So it appears that his plan to crush Iran is to use the United States to do that for him. And he's taken 3 steps under the umbrella of a response to October 7th. And there is obviously some truth to that. But he's attacked twice Iranian sovereignty, which obviously the last time the Iranians responded to that, which was not that successful, but not being covered in the media, is that the loitering munitions, in other words, cheap drones, have a 50% success rate. And the Iranians have a very robust drone program. They've been supplying Russia with drones since that conflict kicked off. So you've attacked an Iranian consulate in Syria, which is considered sovereign soil. You attacked Iran proper in their capital during a presidential inauguration. We are in the opening moments here of a real honest-to-God regional war, which could very quickly spill over into a global conflict.
That's fair. The gentleman that was, or the individual that was killed in Tehran was a guy named Ismail Haniyeh. Does that sound right? Am I saying it correctly?
Haniyeh.
Haniyeh?
Yeah, because we killed Mugnia when I was with NSA. So those are 2 jackwagons that were responsible for the 1983 Marine barracks bombing in Beirut. And we could talk all about the foolhardiness of putting them all there, whatever. That's a discussion for another day. I'm very thankful that those 2 people have been sent straight to hell for killing my Marine and sailor brothers.
There's a discussion going on that I'm seeing that I think is the meta-analysis of how this actually took place and how it actually was allowed to take place, because Israel's probably known where these guys were for a long time. But they didn't target them in Qatar. They ended up killing them in Iran. And Iran has kind of been semi-off limits, at least under the Obama sort of umbrella of diplomacy and giving them money and sort of saying, hey, we're going to favor them. They've done some pretty favorable things, sending pallets of cash and so on. Do we think this is happening because Kamala Harris is sort of taking the primary role right now and the American focus is off and Obama's people have less of a grip?
That might be a stretch. The reason he wasn't killed in Qatar is because the Qataris have been an ally of ours, as good an ally as you can have in the region that's not Israel. and we have bases there. So Qatar is important. So Israel doesn't want to disrupt that. So by attacking him in Tehran, I think it strengthens my argument that Netanyahu has taken concrete steps to start a war involving the United States with Iran. Israel does not have the capabilities to take down Iran. They don't. And a recent congressional report says that the United States military might not have does not have the capabilities to fight Russia or China, considered peer powers. So that means maybe then we do have the capability, we, the United States, to take down Iran. And what does that look like? I mean, we haven't done well with regime change, since the 1950s. The Obama administration missed a golden opportunity during his reign of terror, when they could have collapsed the government in Tehran, but they didn't. So no, this looks like that Netanyahu government is manipulating the pieces on the chessboard for a conflict with Iran to take them down before they become a nuclear power. When I was with the FBI, the MIT, I don't think they did it while I was there, but the study was available, had gathered together a best of their brightest students and locked them in a dorm, gave them access to the internet and said, here, build a nuclear weapon. And they were able to do it right up to the point of getting fissile material, which we know the Iranians have. Now, the Israeli program of killing Iranian scientists using men and women on mopeds and motorcycles, affixing sticky bombs to their vehicles, may have diminished their intellectual talent pool a little bit, but nonetheless, they're there. And Netanyahu knows it, and they don't want them to become a nuclear power. And a lot of people are unfamiliar with the differences between Shia and Sunni Islam. In Shia Islam, they believe they're called Twelvers, the 12th Imam, the direct descendant of Muhammad. And the only way to usher in the 12th Imam and end man's rule on earth and, put it, basically it's an apocalyptic vision where the 12th Imam, the Mahdi, makes himself, visible, and everyone then becomes Islamic or dead. So having a nihilist regime, an apocalyptic regime with nuclear weapons, doesn't appeal to me either, because once that genie's out, it's going to escalate quickly within 24 hours, because there are other criteria of like use or lose and what do we do. So Iran's a problem. Obama missed his opportunity, and now Netanyahu is positioning us where we really don't have a lot of latitude to decide what we're going to do. And Anthony Blinken and the potato head in the White House are not going to be able to navigate, these turbulent waters and get us into a safe place.
Well, and so that kind of gives us a good contrast between what Israel's decisions are, whether you agree with them or not, and sort of the way the U.S. kind of handles business. So I want to pull this thing up because this came out the other day. This is a story coming out of the New York Post. 9/11 mastermind KSM and 2 other terrorists awaiting trial at Guantanamo Bay strike plea deals, which was shocking to people. A lot of folks that were who had family members that died on 9/11 were pretty upset about this. It's a bitter pill to swallow, is what they say, and they were anxiously awaiting some sort of conclusion that we're nearly 24 years later had people who were killed in the initial attack that fell to their death, that chose not to burn to death, and all the horrible things that we saw on 9/11, and then we get this deal. So I remember you saying something to me, and I think it was in our first conversation, that the reason that the well of domestic or of U.S. terrorism coming from international sources dried up was because KSM was taken off the battlefield and put in prison. Am I accurately saying that?
Close.
Okay.
I said that the reason there hasn't been another major terrorist attack on U.S. soil was that KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, is in jail. He's captured in the book, and I forget the author, called Mastermind. He truly was a genius. And look, just because I respect someone doesn't mean that I admire them. You really should be respectful of your enemy and people who want to kill you, and then you can map your strategy out from there. Being contemptuous of them is dangerous. So I respect Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and his intellectual prowess and his ability to put that together. Doesn't mean, that I admire him or anything of that nature. So let's be clear on that. Mm-hmm. So KSM was a genius. He's in jail. But our posture relative to Afghanistan, where we are funding the Taliban to the tune of tens of millions of dollars a month, I think it's like $70 million a month, where they're now operating multiple training camps. Just statistically speaking, there has to be some other brilliant mind that is now gestating and planning in Afghanistan.
Can you give background on who he is and why he was such a central figure, like where he came from? I know you had access to folks in the Saudi, camp and like what was their deference towards him? Kind of explain what it looks like when you get a chance to go deal with some of these folks in Gitmo, because we only just hear it and I just have a picture that's probably not realistic.
KSM was not one of my, collection elements, EEI's essential elements of information. Yep. Didn't do a lot of digging on that. However, if you wanted to develop rapport with one of the detainees, you would, start that conversation about the Sheikh. And there was a great deal of reverence and deference to KSM, but only because of what he had accomplished. My detainees, we knew their rat line, how they got into Afghanistan through Qatar, by the way. But there wasn't a lot of discussion on any of their interactions with KSM.
How strong is the case against him to be able to prove that he was, in fact, the guy that laid out 9/11? It's
100%, but the talking heads on the media are confusing everyone because they're starting from the wrong part. They're starting midway through the book. They're starting midway. They're starting at letter 13 in the alphabet. They forget that KSM and the other detainees in Cuba are unlawful combatants. They are designated as such from the Third Geneva Convention of 1949. There were 3 of them. They're unlawful combatants. Okay, so from an international law standpoint, we have the legal authority to just summarily execute them on the battlefield. Someone in the Bush administration, I don't know who, I'm guessing Rumsfeld or Cheney, probably Cheney, decided that they would be an excellent source of intelligence to mine, to gain a deeper understanding, which we did, especially the Saudi team, because I had said earlier at the outset that they are the intellectual engine behind the global jihad movement. That's where, Medina is, the 2 of the holy cities in Islam, Mecca and Medina. So they lost my train of thought there, but help me out here on Kyle. Where were we headed down on this?
You're getting me to the 13th letter.
Oh, yeah. So we're starting at the 13th letter. So he was an unlawful combatant. Okay, so we had the wherewithal to execute them on the battlefield, but instead we decided to bring them to Gitmo and essentially data mine them. So they're starting with the Supreme Court case in June of 2008, where they assigned constitutional protections to people that the international community said are entitled to no protections. So the Supreme Court screwed
why do you think they did
June
that?
Of 2008. So there is no legal case to be had against KSM because there is no chain of custody for anything. I had detainees, one of whom was a brilliant financial mind, had terabytes of movements of hundreds of millions of dollars, and that person is now a free man back in Saudi Arabia or who knows where else. But we applied U.S. legal standards to people who were entitled to no protections at all in 2008. So when the FBI was down there doing interrogations, occasionally they would come into the booth with me or my team. If the detainee didn't want to talk to him, they would just say, I want my lawyer. And the agent would promptly fold up his notebook. Okay, thank you very much. And I'm like, where are you going? And I'm like,
we're just getting warmed up.
2008.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're not entitled to a lawyer. Okay, they're just entitled not to be put in this specific stress position, but I have a wide latitude to where I can go with them. It's like, no, I'm out. Don't want to be here.
So I think it's interesting and important to note the difference, the legal distinctions, especially anybody who's been in the military and has done so, let's say after 2000, I don't know, let's say I was in 2009, that's when I started, and I went to SEER school. And the expectation was, you're not going into a Geneva Convention sort of sanctified, uniformed opponent, enemy, kind of Cold War mentality. They train you in that still. You still have this fake Soviet prison camp you go into, and they do the Russian fake, guy who comes up there and smacks you around or whatever and puts you in the stress positions. But the most realistic training was like, they're going to put you on your knees in a dirty tent somewhere and cut your head off. And so that's the kind of mentality that I think that air crew and special operations guys were thinking. They weren't thinking we're going into somebody that looked and read the rule book and said, oh, okay, well, these people are entitled to talk to somebody at the embassy and do all this stuff. That didn't happen. So we gave basically battlefield irregular troops, regular troop uniformed military provisions. We gave them that sort of that standing, which they didn't really deserve.
We're fighting the Japanese in Tarawa. That's who we're fighting. These people are not abiding by the laws of land warfare, the Geneva Convention. They could give a rat's you-know-what about the U.S. Constitution. They don't care. That's not their playbook. But for some reason, we decided to show up with this Marquess of Queensberry rules and said, holier than thou. Oh, we're going to play by this because we're America. We're better. And, parents need to stop sending their sons and daughters onto the battlefield playing by Marquess of Queensberry rules. I'm not saying we have to turn into brutal savages, but we need to recognize that that's the playbook that they're using, and we should not be applying our civilized rules to the way that they conduct warfare.
Do you think that the U.S. Justice Department did a disservice? Because they could have theoretically just kept them indefinitely, I guess. They could have imprisoned them for life under the way that it was currently set.
The way, under the Geneva Convention, you're supposed to repatriate all prisoners at the end of hostilities. But there were no national combatants. We were not at war with a nation state. The Soviets held on to prisoners of war for quite some time from nation states, but they absorbed them into the Eastern Bloc, and that's a whole nother story. But we could have held these unlawful combatants, saying under the pretense of, under the laws of land warfare, we could have executed them. Instead, they're going to live out a life imprisonment comfortably in a tropical paradise, and it really is beautiful. Guantanamo is a dry desert environment. You have the summer's a little bit wet, and the winds die down, and the bugs, the Cuban Air Force moves in the form of mosquitoes and other flying objects. But it's actually quite beautiful. And even when they were living, right now they're in fully air-conditioned enclosed facilities. When I was there, they were in basically wire mesh, open squad-based sort of configuration, each detainee in a cell with a squat toilet. But once you're out of the sun in Gitmo, even in the summertime with the fans going on, it's not uncomfortable at all. I've been on far more uncomfortable camping trips with the Boy Scouts than what they were living there. So we could have done that if we wanted to say, hey, we're better. We know we could have executed them. We've data mined them for all they're worth, and we're just going to let them live out their life peacefully in Cuba with halal meals and whatever. But when I was there, the gentleman who wrote the enhanced interrogation procedures for the CIA spent a lot of time with the Saudi team because we were doing what's called long-term strategic interrogations. And, people, it's sad how quickly we forget. We didn't know anything on September 12th, and we didn't know anything for quite a few years after that. So the decision to move them to Guantanamo Bay may have been a prudent one but we were relying on what's called battlefield screening to determine whether people should come to Gitmo or not. And so there were a lot of people there who, I don't mean this in a condescending way, but if you've ever been to a third world country, you understand what I'm talking about. We're just ignorant dirt farmers, and had really no intelligence value. But like the Saudis, the Qataris, the Egyptians to some extent, those people actually had a lot of value, because to say we didn't know squat is an understatement.
That's fair. I want to give you kind of a final question here, and this is more of a projection forward, so your analytical hat put on here. Do you think that doing this plea deal like we're seeing announced in the New York Post is going to have any long-term impact on recruiting, on future sort of retainment of those or any operational sort of effect on the CT environment, the counterterrorism environment in the United States going forward?
It's a pile on. It's just like one thing after another. I think the dam broke at Abbey Gate. The administration is allowing Netanyahu to position us into a major global conflict. And I know from my friends who are either still in uniform or recently retired and face the possibility of recall that we're not going to go fight your wars. Okay, you need to figure this out, but we're done. You can only take so many knives in the back when you realize that, hey, we're being lied to and manipulated. Kind of like the Palestinians, we're right back to where we started. We're lied to and manipulated by billionaires living large in Qatar. We're being lied to and manipulated by millionaires sitting in Congress and the Senate.
As usual, a ray of sunshine, George. That's what you always bring to us. I do appreciate it, though. This is why I ask people that care more about foreign affairs than I do. This is why I sit in the America only camp.
Oh, I'm 100%. I mean, look, if the first question anybody should ask themselves when they're looking at, especially international news, how does this affect me and my family? Okay, if you can't make that linkage, you don't have to be a graduate of some PhD or master's program in international studies. If it's not readily apparent to you, well, then it probably doesn't exist.
It makes perfect sense, folks. I want you to follow George, especially if you're over listening to us on Twitter. You can follow him at Senior Chief EXW. What percentage of people make Senior Chief, my friend?
Less than 1/10 of 1%.
It's a very, very exclusive club, and you're in it without any hair, but still in it. You guys can follow
I got a
him
great
on
smile, though. And look at these are good chompers. I mean,
those are good. Those look like they were government maintained chompers. You can follow him on True Social, and it's at Jarhead George. George has maintained his intelligence roots, so he has different names on every platform, which is really hard to market him. But you guys should follow him if you want aggressive and snarky takes. Thanks for jumping on this morning. Thanks for volunteering, by the way. Thanks for hearing my telepathic request. That was timely.
Always. Can I just stay here and watch the rest of the show?
Yeah, you can. Just mute yourself. You can hang around. Okay. All right, folks, we're going to keep pushing forward. First, I want to say thanks to my buddies over at Catholic Vote. Today is the day when we are dropping the last Between the Lines. It is now taking on a new form. You will be seeing it very soon. If you want to check that out, you can go to the show description and link through. If you're watching on YouTube, I gave you the YouTube link. If you're watching on Rumble, it's the Rumble link. If you're listening, it's the YouTube link, I think. That's their biggest channel. CatholicVote.org is the website if you guys want to support them in the fight for faith, family, and freedom. And I got a little special thing for you right now. Check this out. Donald Trump, at Real Donald Trump on True Socials, says CatholicVote.org is doing great work getting voters to the polls. All Catholics should join this incredible cause. Crazy Kamala Harris is anti-Catholic. She's attacked a judicial nominee for being a member of a highly respected Knights of Columbus. There should never be a religious test for serving our country. In God we trust, and a link to Catholic Vote. I don't know what they asked him to do, but that's always nice to see when something comes out there. That does sound kind of Trumpian, so I kind of tend to believe he actually sent that out. This was yesterday, and it had a significant traction over on True Social. So if you guys want to follow them, you can do that. And they're always at Catholic Vote, just like me. Real easy. At Kyle Seraphin, at Catholic Vote. We don't keep it too complicated. Let's keep pressing on because there are more things out there. And the biggest thing that is going on for the left right now, one, people are killing off terrorists, and that upsets those on the left. Secondarily, here is this one. Check it out. Donald Trump falsely suggests that Kamala Harris misled voters about her race. I don't know why it's false. It seems accurate. And unfortunately, I was getting excited about bringing on George. So I have a grab bag of videos that I know are going to be relevant, but I don't know what order they're in. I think this is going to be the exchange between Trump and this reporter that you're seeing on the screen. But if it's not, I'll switch back and we'll find it again. So we may be just doing kind of a dig into the bag. This is the downside of a live show and a one-man band. Here we go.
I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for black workers and black entrepreneurs. I've done so much, and and I say this, historically black colleges and universities were out of money. They were stone cold broke, and I saved them, and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense. And then you said you can't do it with Zoom. Well, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with...
All right, he kind of goes off the rails there a little bit. He starts calling out the logistics of how they were incapable of getting things started on time, and that they wouldn't use Zoom, and that the other people were supposed to be there, so it was going to be sort of a debate format or maybe like mutual questioning. I mean, he's not wrong. This was a setup. They put him up there, and then he does the Jerry Maguire, as one of you just said in the chat. They just said, hey, I'm Mr. Black People. How dare you? It's pretty funny. I actually don't think this is the brilliance that people called it out. Listen, this is another one of those litmus tests, a Rorschach test. If you think Donald Trump kills it every time he goes out and speaks, then you thought this was brilliant and amazing. And if you think that Donald Trump is a bigot and a terrible person, then a lot of people thought that as well. When I listen to him speak, I go, he's not artful. This is a classic Steve Friend description, an inartful way of saying something that we do agree on, which is that this was an unfair question. She spent 43 seconds basically lambasting him, setting him up for a defensive answer. And I think he did a pretty good job about not being that defensive. I think there was a better and probably a tighter way of saying it. But in the moment, he's Donald Trump. He doesn't put on a fake black accent to pretend that he's somewhere that he's not. He doesn't pretend to be someone that he's not. And good on him. He called her out. They didn't say, good morning, Mr. Former President, or whatever Mr. President, thanks for being here. We appreciate your time, and I know it's valuable, and thanks for giving us. None of that. There's no formalities, just dives into it. And I love that he calls out ABC, which is playing to the red meat base. The thing is more people are starting to see this is pretty unreasonable. This is not the way that you conduct journalism. You could ask that. You say, hey, you've had a lot of questions from the black community about the way that you've talked to them. How do you defend your words, or do you stand by them? Boom, and let them go. There are fair ways to ask that question if you want to get into it. They don't do this. We are seeing the most partisan journalist, if you want to use that thing. And this was at a meeting of, what was this called? It was called the National Association of Black Journalists, which was in Chicago. For me, and maybe you guys think differently, I never understood how you can have a National Association of Black anything. I never understood how there was a group called Blacks in Government, because I apply what I call the mirror test. Maybe you have a different name. Maybe there's actually a different name for this officially. But when you say something like the National Association of Black Journalists, I want to know, are you allowed to have the National Association of White Journalists? Is that acceptable? If you had that, would that immediately be like bigoted and racist? Because it feels like it to me. It's the mirror test. In the same way that I had a boss at the FBI who came up and she would put her hand on me sometimes, which is very awkward. And she would put her hand on my shoulder and she would say, that's a really nice looking shirt. I want you to imagine the mirror test. If you're a man and you walk up to one of the women that works with you, especially a subordinate, you put your hand on their shoulder and you say, that's a lovely blouse. You should wear it more often. Can you do that? I complained to HR. I was like, this is inappropriate. By the way, now I have to burn this shirt because I don't want my wife to go out and shank you. Can you have a group called Whites in Government? Are we going to be okay with that? I don't think we are. I don't actually want that group. I don't know what white has to do with anything. It doesn't change the way that I think. I simply think the way that I do. And sometimes people have the same skin color and sometimes they don't. So when we start talking about this sort of racist and sexist attacks, and that's pretty much what they all say, this is the little movement towards it. His remarks, this is coming from, of course it is, the New York Times. This is their news analysis. Trump's remarks on Harris evoke a haunting and unsettling history because white America has longed to define racial categories. Basically, at some point during that interview or whatever that was, Donald Trump says, I didn't know she was even black. She's been only black recently. She's probably been black, as we talked about yesterday, since she went to Howard University, but she made a definitive choice. Do you not remember Barack Obama went through this as well? The question was, he had a white parent and a black parent. How to decide which one was the most prevalent? And they said the decision was when he married a black woman, that's when he decided to embrace his black half. And that's why he was a black president and not a mixed race president. Now, interestingly, the people that I know that are really fair-minded, I have friends that I think of as being black because they have really dark skin. That's just the way they look. And when I have said that, they've corrected me and said, no, I'm multiracial. I don't know what the other races are, and I don't really care. I'm like, okay, cool, I get it. Yeah, you're not defined by one thing. Those people are also American heroes, Green Berets and things like that go out there and serve in special operations troops, doing dangerous things on behalf of this country for the thing that many of us used to believe in, and a lot of us don't, just the way that George just articulated, not wanting to send our daughters and sons into the battlefield, even though we may have signed up to do it. And those of us who are now out of this sort of age bracket where they're going to come after and ask us to come do it, we're not going to do it because of stuff like this. It turns out. In any case, I find it very interesting that the people who are doing the analysis, and you know I love meta-analysis, the two people that are doing the analysis of Donald Trump's very unsettling history of race in front of an audience of black journalists, and they capitalize B. They lowercase the W, by the way. I don't know why that is either, because quote-unquote black apparently also includes people from the Caribbean, who have a very different experience than those who came through chattel slavery in Africa. This is not the same group of people, not ethnically, not religiously, not historically. We're talking about all black people get the same treatment. And to me, there's a thing for that. It's called racism. And I'm not into it. And I don't think Donald Trump actually exhibits any of those behaviors. He's not very artful about the way he says stuff. He kind of goes through like a bull in the china shop. But that's kind of Donald Trump at this point. We've sort of accepted, baked in. So I do have a video of a guy being asked about that, and it may be this video right here. But the meta-analysis is the two journalists, we'll put that in air quotes, from the New York Times, Lisa Larrere and Maya King, is like a white lady who looks like one of the cat ladies we've been talking about, and a black woman who has 1950s nerdy glasses. I just think it's funny. I just think it's funny that this is the thing that they want to call out. If that's the line of attack, I don't think it's very fruitful because the record of Donald Trump doesn't line up with the thing that they're claiming. And it hasn't. And so it'll be very difficult to pursue the line of attack where you say, yeah, he's a racist. They've already said that. And he already won based on that. Nobody cared. And now he's actually been president. And the outcomes were quite a bit better. So let's take a little stab at this. I think this is the correct video. Again, apologies, I didn't get these sorted out beforehand. Let's see what this is.
And tell me what appeals to you about Trump.
His business acumen. When Donald Trump was president, we were all doing a lot better financially. He's always been a business icon. So why wouldn't we want that business icon to be president?
And he had this to say about Harris.
I think she hasn't done anything worth mentioning.
What would you have wanted to see Vice President Harris accomplish that she has not?
I would have liked her to kind of bring a calm to the border. The border crisis has gotten out of hand.
The border crisis has got out of hand. Again, that's a financial argument, I think, for most people, especially if somebody is working in a lower paid wage job. You're competing against people that are coming in and bidding against you, and they have all the back of the American government, and they didn't come here and they don't deserve it. So that seems like a pretty open and reasonable discussion. I don't know how you counter that claim. I don't. It's like, and if you guys couldn't tell, that was MSNBC making those claims. They were doing an interview. Light-skinned black lady talking to a black man. You can probably tell from the tone of his voice, there's some things that are distinctive. The man is saying things that he's like, I care about business acumen. I care about that America right now is having financial problems. So how about we do better? The other thing I think is kind of interesting is that we get this sort of 3.5 years of Donald Trump as a danger to democracy. Meanwhile, ABC is reporting that the DNC, this is the same organization that was out there trying to tear Trump up on stage. The DNC has a virtual roll call that's going to kick off. And on Monday, we expect the voting to close where she will be the Democratic nominee. Kamala Harris, the lady that didn't run in the primaries at all for the last 8 or 10 months. Has anyone seen her out there with her name on the top of the ticket? Did she get primary votes? No. The Democrat Party did the same thing, by the way, to Bernie Sanders, who had a lot of popular support. The democratic process is only interesting to them if it yields the outcome that they want. So they're all in for democracy, as long as democracy serves the interest of power and serves the person that is their preferred candidate. And I think Democrats are starting to see some of this too. It's not a lot of them. There's a lot of people that just basically reboot. They pull the chip out that says Joe Biden. They put in the chip that says Kamala Harris. She's really, really great. Everybody's excited about it. So we're going to go ahead and vote for her. The nominees that are coming in, the delegates that come in, they've all decided to change their votes, even though they may not have the ability. And then the last question is she actually going to get on the ballot? And that's an open question. We will have Mike Howell on here talking about what Heritage Project, or the Heritage Foundation rather, and the Oversight Project is willing to do to keep her off the ballot. Because listen, this is not Vietnam. There are rules. In the words of Walter, Sobchak from The Big Lebowski. It's funny. You didn't see him. What is his name? John Goodman. I don't know if he's even alive anymore, but you wouldn't see that kind of a guy on the white dudes for Harris. You did see Jeff Bridges, who was the dude who was abiding. He's a dude, and he's for Harris. It's gross, man. Are you for democracy? Were you saying that kind of stuff? I would love it. Absolutely love it. If somebody would do a little talk on all the people that are now 100% behind Harris and seem to ignore the fact that democracy was completely ignored. This thing that they think is a virtue. Because I don't see it. It's not the virtue to me. It never has been. I'm actually a little bit more elitist. You guys probably have gotten a taste of that. There are people who are smarter than other people. There are people who make better decisions than other people. In fact, it's not even our palate cleanser. It's like the step up to the palate cleanser, I guess. But I downloaded this video because every time I hear it, it stays in my head. It's probably in George's head right now because I played it for him before we got started. It's a mashup of all the answers on Google or on Yahoo Answers. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's places on the internet where you can go out there and like type a retarded question and then people will respond to it. And then you go like, oh, okay, cool. And so doctors and regular people and somebody's mom that has a lot of time and the childless cat lady, they'll all respond on it. So you can type in your question. But the amazing thing to me is how dumb the questions are and how many misspellings and how ignorant that sort of thing is. And it kind of tells me, look, we think that people are making logical and rational decisions, that they are going to choose the best option for them based on their situation in life. And then you watch those videos. I may play that after this first one. I've got another one here, which is, I'm digging into the bag. So this one, I'm not 100% sure what we're going to play, but I know it was relevant to what we were going to talk about. Sorry about that, folks. Here we go.
Well, John, look, this is such a frustrating housing market for the millions of Americans who are on the outside looking in, right? They want to buy, but they just can't. Not with these prices, not with these mortgage rates. And some of them, they're throwing in the towel, they're walking away. So this brand new CNN poll shows that 86% of U.S. renters would like to buy, but they can't. 86%, just 13% say they could afford it, but they're choosing not to. Now, to take this a step further, when you just look at the ones who can't afford it, only 46% say it's either very or somewhat likely that eventually they'll be able to buy. More than half, 54% say it's not too likely or not at all likely that they'll ever be able to buy. That really speaks to a lot of pessimism here about the American dream, how it feels like it's out of reach. Politically, you can see how this would be an issue for the party in power. And economically, it's a problem too because, look, home ownership remains the ticket to wealth generation. So this is just widening the gap between the haves and the have-nots. It is.
I don't know what the well generation meant. I think he meant generational wealth, but I have these things in my head. I actually structure an argument. And so the economy being an issue is something that falls squarely on the Biden-Harris administration. There's actually some talk right now that the Fed may change the interest rates coming up in maybe September. They've said they might try to cut it a little bit, which would be just in time, I guess, for the November election. But I want to show you guys something. And also, I actually like that you guys are always fact checking me in real time. Whatever 007 said, John Goodman is a lie, or said Jeff Bridges is a great actor, but he turns out he's a shit person. And then Mitch's Glocks told us that John Goodman is in fact alive. I think those are true. That makes sense. I grabbed this chart. So if you guys don't have somebody in your life that provides you with good information on financial markets and what's going on and sort of meta-analysis of how the economy works in certain areas, you should probably have those people. That's a smart thing to do. I am not particularly interested in money and in the stock market, in crypto. Like I got Ryan Matta whispering in my ear about crypto, but I do have a cousin that has been working in this industry for about 20 years. He made a lot of money. He's independently, like much more well off than most people I know because he makes smart decisions. And a lot of it is because he reads this kind of stuff. So he sent this the other day. This is from Reventure Consulting. The source is a guy named Robert Schiller. So I didn't fact check this, but he doesn't send me things that are garbage. So if you guys see something otherwise, what this is a graph on the screen right now. It's a graph of inflation-adjusted home prices from 1890 until today, till 2024. And most of us have not seen this. It's fairly incredible. What we see is in the 1890s. Okay, there's a through line going through, which is called the 130-year average, which is essentially the average price across all of this time. Okay, and that's sitting where most of the time before 1970, the inflation-adjusted home price was below the 130-year average. In fact, the average has been drawn up by a couple of small periods in U.S. history. One of them is the late 1890s rather. There's a little blip above it in the beginning of the 80s. There's another little blip up at the end of the 80s. And then, of course, the housing spike that went from 2000 to 2008 before the big crash. And then since that time, it's been steadily growing to the point that we are now at the biggest housing bubble of all time, according to this chart. But most importantly, that the cost, inflation adjusted, for housing, for buying a home, is higher than it's ever been in America, and it's not even close. We are now probably 25%, if I'm looking at the height of the graph, 25% less affordable than it was in 2008. That is a big, big, precipitous cliff. And as my cousin stated, it's like, gravity is real. What goes up must come down. At some point, this breaks. So the interesting thing is, even though CNN is telling you that the economy is not affordable, and I do believe that's true, there's also something to say that being a homeowner may not be the best thing to do at this point. If you haven't locked in at one of the low rates that came in, by the way, under Trump, if you don't have one of those interest rates under 3%, buying one at 6.5%, 7%, and the inflation of weakening your dollar and the cost of housing, some of whom have doubled or tripled in the last 6 to 8 years. And if you guys have been watching this market, and I have, because I've had to be in and out of the housing market. My family had to sell our home. And the house that we sold, we're probably selling it at the top of the market in New Mexico. We weren't. It's still worth more than we sold it for. In fact, it's up by almost 10% since we moved out of our house in 2022. So this is the legacy that the Biden administration should have, I think. And it should be troubling. It's a thing that they should have to own. They should have to take it. Going back to the grab bag here, before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and say, if you guys want to support Mike Lindell, if the times are tough and you want a great promo code, if you need bedding, if you need sheets, if you want to get their flash sale done and get some really inexpensive slippers, whatever they call them, flip-flops, 50% off or more using promo code KYLE at mypillow.com/Kyle. Again, it's mypillow.com/Kyle, or just go to MyPillow and then punch in the promo code at the end, KYLE. It'll always say with promo code. It doesn't matter which promo code you have. It turns out ours gets the same deal as even the biggest people in the media space, and they don't need your support, but we do. So we appreciate it. Again, if you guys want to support what Mike's doing, if you want to make a good deal, times are tough, you want to kind of scrimp some pennies, you can get yourself any number of things. They've got some buy one, get one deals. Check them out, mypillow.com/Kyle, promo code KYLE. I'm looking down. All right, I got this video, and I know I made an argument here to myself, but again, we're digging into it, so I apologize. Let's see what this one is. We'll see it together.
Right. If you're going after Officer Harris, you're either racist or sexist or ableist.
Right.
So they will use...
Ableist.
Yeah, because she's a retard.
Jesus Christ.
She's literally retarded. I mean... Ukraine is a country in Europe, and Russia is another country and a powerful country, and Russia invaded Ukraine, and that's wrong.
What's really important is what can be unburdened by what has been.
I think of her as America's wine mom because bitch seems like she's 3 deep by noon, and she's got the 3 phases of wine mom. She's got happy drunk. Oh my God, this cereal's got a rabbit on it. It's so great. Cackling, cackling, cackling. Then there is drunk at work, where you're trying to make sense, but you don't. Space is around us all and unites us all and inspires us all. And then there's I'm being stern so you don't realize how plastered I am, and I'm making a point. Dr. Little Girl was me. Now I'm going to go upstairs and don't knock on the door because I'm going to pass out. So those are her 3 ways she talks, and those are the wine mom phases.
Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
Yep. Simple-minded. What I set that up with, and the reason why I put it there, is because, one, I forgot some of the dumb things that she said, and she said some incredibly dumb things. I've also never thought of her as America's wine mom that has no kids. As somebody who went to the FBI Academy and announced to my peers that I was a former stay-at-home dad with no kids, I get that that's a joke. I was doing some self-effacing humor as a married guy who had no children and didn't have a job just before I went into the FBI. I was actually working as a tutor and kind of set up my own little business there. But yeah, we're talking about the lady that is the vice president saying dumb stuff. And I had another clip of her saying some dumb stuff. This is her addressing the economy. She doesn't answer questions. And so she's weak. I can only imagine how fun it'll be to see her on stage with a Donald Trump, because Trump generally does answer the question eventually. He does make claims. Some of them are boastful. Some of them are false. Some of them are on the edge. But let's be real. This lady can't do it. And she certainly can't do it on the fly. So maybe she is day drunk all the time. Here's her talking about how she's going to solve the problem of inflation, despite the fact that the government's pumping a bunch of money into the economy.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you would prevent the new spending and your Build Back Better agenda from exacerbating the problem? And also, what else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously, very seriously. And we know from the history of this issue in the United States that when you see these prices go up, it has a direct impact on the quality of life for all people in our country. So it's a big issue, and we take it seriously. And it is a priority, therefore. So we have addressed it in a number of ways. One of the issues that we know is related to this is the supply chain issue that we just discussed. And so on a domestic level, in terms of domestic policy, one of the approaches we have taken is to work with labor unions and to work with municipalities in opening back up and extending the hours of our ports. There are actually 3 I have in mind: Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Savannah. And in fact, part of the infrastructure.
She goes on and on and on. She never answers this question because she doesn't know anything. I mean, I think Michael Malice was the guy that was on with Joe Rogan. And yeah, she's functionally retarded. These are just words. She was going to talk about opening a port. How does that change inflation? How does that solve the problem of the government pumping too much money into the system? Either she doesn't understand, she doesn't know how to answer, or she just has never been held accountable. She's never actually been subject to a real test, which is the sort of metric for the DEI type hire, the diversity hire. There's a video that I put out on social media this morning, which I ripped right off Instagram because it was funny. And it was the Secret Service that we think exists and then the Secret Service that actually exists. And I don't care if those were Secret Service agents that were actually involved, the females that couldn't put their gun in the holster and all that kind of stuff. They were women that were told that they were the same as men in the same kind of field when they were not, obviously. Even if they came out of HSI, the Secret Service co-signed and said, you're going to go do this job and we can substitute. We used to see this all the time. It's like any agent is good enough to go do this job. Well, that's not true. You can't substitute me with somebody else when I have a tactical background and I understand how to do emergency medicine and I bring in, these values to the team. I can ride a motorcycle. We had a female that rode a motorcycle on my team. She fell over on her first day. We had a dude who did the same thing too. So one motorcycle ride, even because you have the license doesn't mean you know how to ride a bike. In fact, we had 4 people that I know of that fell off motorcycles that we went and got. And I was like, what are you guys doing? They dropped the bikes. They were government bikes. They were really easy to ride too, by the way. I'd never been on a Hayabusa, but you can't make a turn in a 1 lane each way. And we had a Hayabusa. Yeah, we had all kinds of wild stuff for my surveillance team. We had Kawasaki's and we had these 1400cc touring bikes. The fact of the matter is they would drop them on turns, on not on a course, just doing a pleasure ride, familiarization with the bike, and they would put them over and put them on the ground. So they were all scratched up and road rashed. It was really sad. One person is not going to be equal to another person, and Kamala isn't unequal to all of them. I will tell you the one thing that I do know is true, and this is especially true, especially because we're talking about this Biden-Harris administration that's all in on the LGBTQIA stuff. We're seeing something happen right now in the Olympics, which I couldn't fathom as a kid, and it's probably why I don't care about the Olympics. This is really sad. This is incredibly sad because this woman, stepped out there to be a boxer. I think she's from Italy, and She gets punched a couple times by a guy and decides, I'm not in this. I signed up for the women's division and the men in it are not there. So I've got a little take from the Olympics, which is really sad. It's in Italian, if my memory, I actually don't know what language this is. So I'll just say it is in a language that I don't speak, but my wife will tell me later if it was Italian. And then we're going to do kind of like a sick and humorous take, which I played for George, and you guys will get a kick out of too. So here's a little look at where we're at in 2024 in the Olympics and why it's no longer relevant to people who care, I don't know, about any women's sports. I used to cheer on, like Janet Evans was one of my heroes when I was a kid. And now I don't want to see it because there's dudes competing. She just walked off. She took like the third or fourth hit to the jaw and she was like, that's a dude that's hitting me. I'm not playing that game. So here's how weird dudes. Look, if we're going to do it, then let's just do it in a completely retarded way. To quote our previous quote clip. Let's just be retarded if we're going to be retarded.
Let's go, boys. What do? Men, we win, we conquer, we dominate. Check this out. Trans woman wins Miss Maryland USA. Another win for the boys. Not only are we dominating women in women's sports, we are now dominating them in beauty pageants. What's up, proud man right here? Give me my flowers!
Give him his flowers, okay? Look, end of the day, how goofy is it that we are having like men compete? There are all these different sports where this is happening, and I think that's the legacy of the stupidity that we have right now. So if men want to embrace it and like tatted up dudes who look like Conor McGregor and probably served in the Marine Corps and were buddies of George Hill back in the day, if like those guys want to go out there and compete, by the way, that beauty queen pageant, the one in Maryland, that one, married to a Marine. So we'll just throw that out there. My window licking crayon eating friends, we love you, but like, don't be marrying dudes. If you're a Marine Corps officer and you're marrying a dude who looks like a pretty lady, it's still a dude. We still know. We see you. That's strange. Anyway, dudes beating women at beauty pageants is the saddest, most disgusting thing. And this is why I'm telling you, less people voting is actually better. I am kind of anti-democratic in that way, and I will continue to say it. It's not a comfortable thing for most Americans to think about. But our country wasn't designed to be a democracy, which is why the left always goes out there for the low information voters. They want to push out this idea. It doesn't matter that they're willing to do something totally different because they know they won't pay attention. Here's a sampling of those Yahoo answers that I told you about. We're going to end with a couple of just funny things because the world is far too serious. We're talking about assassinations and bombs dropping and maybe another Middle East conflict that draws us into a world war. So here's something stupid. It's creative. It's catchy. It's a good example. They're reading, if you're listening to us, what he is reading and the words that he's mispronouncing are the actual pronunciations of the spellings from the illiterate people that are on Yahoo that want to know if they're pregnant. And so this song is entitled, Am I Pregnant?
Am I pregnant? Am I pregnant? Is there a possibility that I'm pregnant?
Could I be pregnant? Am I pregnant? 38 plus 2 weeks. Pregnant,
Danger ups pregnant sex. Will it hurt, baby? Top of his head.
Can you down a 24 water slide peg night? I think my dog is pregnant.
All right, that's for all of you that are the childless, non-cat ladies that listen to our show. At least you're not one of those retards, so that's good. My favorite is Danger Ops Pregnant. I don't know what Danger Ops Pregnant is, but it sounds like something that would happen probably to someone who's married to a Marine. You would have Danger Ops Pregnant. It's so silly. Let's do a 5-star review and shut this thing down. We'll have Friendly Friday with you guys tomorrow. This one is from Newt6668. Says, let's make it 1,000 reviews when we are trying to make that push. And I appreciate the 5-star review to get us over the edge. Says, I've been listening to Kyle since he began his new life as a podcaster, bringing the uncomfortable truth in a jovial way. His humorous segments on Friday with his buddy Steve and occasionally Garrett give the show that little twist that the other podcasts I listen to lack. Keep being the truth. Never stop fighting for your convictions, and God bless. And of course, we have people like George Hill, who's still lurking in my green room listening to us. And I appreciate him giving you guys that information. Make sure you're following our guest who will give you solid, black pill, occasional, but unvarnished takes throughout his social medias, and it's at Senior Chief EXW. I do have a palate cleanser for you today, a real one. This is Kamala Harris's rebranding. I'm assuming this is AI, but I can't swear to it because she kind of actually sounds like this in real life. Let's think about the case being made for Kamala Harris and enjoy.
I'm Kamala Harris, and this is my rebranding. I get it. Until now, Americans have seen me as that childless Karen that always has too many drinks at the cocktail party, and you don't have the heart to tell my husband Doug that he's a whipped beta male married to an insufferable witch. Look, I get it. I'm unlikable. I'm inauthentic. I say crazy shit.
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. When we talk about the children of the community, they are the children of the community. You need to get to go and need to be able to get where you need to go to do the work and get home.
And yes, okay, I was the border czar. And so even though I might have been a bad vice president, what I do have is ambition. You would not believe what I would do for this country. Oh, who am I kidding? If you vote for me, you're as cringe as Chuck Schumer.
We are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm clapping. You don't have to.
Let's all see what can be, unburdened by what has been. And by what has been, I mean the Biden-Harris administration. Vote Trump 2024. Let's make America great again.
I'm Professor Sagan Deesnuts, and I approve this message.
Put out by Mr. Reagan. Good stuff. Pretty funny. Apparently not an ad for Kamala, although I could see her actually going the wrong way with her own advertisement because she says a lot of dumb stuff and they're not wrong. Little takeaway, kind of final thought, and I think that the palate cleanser embraces this. You're going to see a lot of AstroTurf nonsense. You're going to see dudes for Kamala and black women and white women for Kamala and all these other kind of things. And I think they're all about as real as that AI, that her record is horrific. Whether she's black or Indian is sort of irrelevant, even if Donald Trump wants to talk about it. None of that stuff actually matters. The things that matter is that the record is terrible. She cannot be unburdened by what has been, because what has been a disastrous 4 years, and a bunch of people know it. You can say it in a non-mean way. You can share it with humorous stuff like this. These kind of parodies, I think, actually move the needle as much as anything else, because we've got a people that are potentially voting that want to know if they're pregnante and if they can have danger ops pregnant. So those people are not going to respond to your intelligent and well-reasoned arguments. They're not even going to be able to decide like how much things cost at the gas pump. They just probably need to be moved with humor. So we can do that. We can do it nicely, and we don't have to judge them, because their life is probably already hard enough. They're living on a diet of crayons in the Biden economy. That's expensive. All right, y'all. I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for being in the live chat, all of you that have been out there. And make sure you have shared the show. Make sure you like it before it is all over. If you want to subscribe to our channel, we appreciate that. You can also follow us over on Locals as we slowly build up the base so we can do the long form and some behind-the-scenes stuff. That is at KyleSeraphin.com. I bet I actually have a little credit piece here that says it. There it is, Locals Community, KyleSeraphin.com. You don't have to pay to be part of it. You can join us and make comments. Or if you want to join us and support us for $5 a month, you can do that at any time. And we're always appreciative of new subscribers, new supporters in that space. Until tomorrow, with the Friendly Friday, I'll say God bless you. We'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.
The children of Gaza are suffering. They have no food or medical supply. But you can help. Please open your heart and make a donation by clicking in the link below. Shukran and God bless you.
Cannot believe what we have brought on Gaza. Thank Allah that we are safe in the plaza. There's nothing left to eat like a Ramadan retreat. I don't really give a shit, cause I'm hanging in my suite. Check out, we are dealing here with monsters. The room service wouldn't bring us lobsters. Call my Khalifa. FIFA to play with us on FIFA. And tell her to dress up like she is a nurse in chief. Dollar bills, dollar bills. My people have no water, wonder how it feels. Dollar bills, dollar bills. They have no gasoline, I just order menu wheels. Donate us money, my dog needs new Armani. Cause the sky is black, but Qatar is always sunny. Knocking on the door, fuck it's demo side. Chill ya baba, I just ordered sushi avocado. Dollar bills. Mashal is so straight, he just got himself new grills. Dollar bills. Put some Netflix on, I don't want to see the kills. Donate us money, my dog needs new Armani. Cause the sky is black, but Qatar is always sunny. You just give me money, life is pretty funny. Cause the sky is black, but Qatar is always sunny.
Cry harder.
We need more money.
People of the world,